The Galactic Defense Academy floated in the darkness of space like a massive silver wheel, spinning slowly around the peaceful planet of Centera Prime. For 300 years, beings from 1,000 different worlds had come here to learn the arts of defense and cooperation. The hallways buzzed with students who had skin in every color imaginable, who walked on 2 legs or 4 or sometimes none at all, who breathed different gases and saw different wavelengths of light. It was a place built on the dream that all species could work together despite their differences. Katie Brooks stepped off the transport shuttle and immediately felt wrong. The gravity was too light, making her feel like she might float away if she moved too quickly. The air smelled sterile and recycled. The ceiling seemed too low even though it was perfectly adequate for most species who studied here. She adjusted the strap of her regulation duffel bag on her shoulder and tried not to think about how far she was from home. A being approached her at the landing platform. He had 4 arms, lavender skin that seemed to shimmer under the station lights, and large dark eyes that looked at her with something that might have been nervousness. His name was Quellen, and he was a Velnari from a world where gravity was barely strong enough to keep atmosphere attached to the ground. Quellen held out one hand in what Katie recognized as a formal greeting gesture. She shook it gently, very gently, aware that her normal handshake could probably break his delicate fingers. He pulled his hand back quickly and consulted a data pad with another hand while his remaining 2 hands clasped together in front of his chest. "Cadet Brooks," he said through a translator device that made his musical language sound flat and mechanical. "Welcome to the Academy. We have prepared special accommodations for your arrival. Your quarters have been structurally reinforced. The training equipment has been modified. Your food synthesizer has been programmed with high-calorie options suitable for human metabolism." Katie smiled and tried to look grateful, rather than uncomfortable. "Thank you, sir. I appreciate all the preparations." Quellen's large eyes blinked slowly. "We hope it will be sufficient. Your species is quite different from most of our students. We have never had a human here before." "I understand. I'll do my best to adapt." "Yes, well." Quellen gestured down the corridor with 2 of his hands. "Your first class begins in 2 station cycles. I suggest you use that time to rest and become familiar with the lighter gravity. Many species find it disorienting at first." Katie nodded and followed his directions through the pristine white corridors. Other students stopped and stared as she walked past. Some whispered to each other in languages her translator couldn't quite catch. A few pressed themselves against the walls as if afraid she might attack them just by walking too close. One small creature that looked like a floating jellyfish actually fled around a corner when Katie made eye contact. She tried not to let it bother her. She had known this would be difficult. Humans had only made contact with the galactic community 15 years ago, and their reputation had arrived before their diplomats had finished explaining that not all humans were dangerous soldiers. Earth was classified as a Class 12 hazard world, a place where the gravity would crush most species, and where the native predators could kill a careless visitor in seconds. Humans had evolved to survive that environment, which made them strong and fast and dangerous by the standards of most civilized species. Her quarters were small but functional. One side of the room had a sleeping platform that looked sturdy enough to hold her weight without collapsing. The other side had a desk, a storage unit, and a viewport showing the stars outside. There was also another sleeping platform on the opposite wall. A small blue creature was hiding under that platform. Katie could see feathers and hear rapid breathing. "Hello?" Katie said softly, setting her bag down carefully. "I'm Katie. I guess we're roommates." The breathing stopped. Then a small voice came from under the platform. "You're the human. They told me there would be a human. They said I shouldn't worry, but everyone knows about your kind. You hunt for sport. You climb mountains that would kill normal beings. Your world has predators that eat creatures like me." Katie sat down on her own bunk, moving slowly so she wouldn't startle her roommate further. "I'm not going to hurt you. I came here to learn just like you did. I want to be part of the galactic community. Do you promise?" "I promise." Very slowly, the creature emerged from hiding. She was a Thixian. Katie knew from her pre-arrival briefing, a species that resembled small earth birds mixed with mammals. Her name was Pip, and her blue feathers were currently puffed up in obvious anxiety. "You're bigger than I thought you'd be," Pip said. "I'm actually average size for a human woman. There are plenty who are much taller." Pip's feathers flattened slightly. "That's terrifying." Over the next 2 days, Katie explored the academy and tried to find her place in this strange new world. The training facilities were designed for beings much weaker than her. She had to be careful not to grip the equipment too hard or she would break it. The food from the synthesizers tasted bland and left her feeling hungry no matter how much she ate. The educational materials assumed knowledge of galactic history that she didn't have. But the hardest part was the isolation. Other students avoided her in the hallways. They wouldn't sit near her in the common areas. When she tried to join study groups, they suddenly remembered they had other commitments. Even the instructors kept their distance, treating her with cold professionalism and nothing more. Only Pip slowly warmed up to her. The small Thixian watched Katie carefully those first days, studying her movements and reactions. When Katie helped Pip reach a high shelf without being asked, Pip seemed surprised. When Katie apologized for accidentally making too much noise while Pip was studying, Pip seemed confused. When Katie shared some of her synthesized food without expecting anything in return, Pip finally started to relax. "You're not what I expected," Pip admitted on the second evening as they prepared for sleep. "Everyone says humans are aggressive and violent. But you're gentle with me." Katie smiled in the darkness. "Humans can be both. It depends on the situation and the choices we make. I choose to be gentle with you because you're my friend." "We're friends?" "I'd like to be, if that's okay with you." Pip's feathers rustled softly. "I'd like that too." Katie's first major class was tactical combat applications. She arrived early and took a position at the back of the large training hall, hoping to observe without drawing too much attention. The hall had padded floors and walls lined with various training equipment that looked delicate enough to break if she breathed on it too hard. Other students filtered in gradually, clustering in small groups based on species. The room fell silent when Katie entered, and she felt dozens of eyes tracking her movements. She tried to look non-threatening, keeping her posture relaxed and her expression neutral. The instructor arrived precisely on time. Commander Vrex was a Corlean, a species that looked like bipedal reptiles with bronze scales and sharp teeth. He was one of the larger instructors at the academy, though Katie still had several inches of height on him. "Welcome to Tactical Combat Applications," Vrex said in a deep, rumbling voice. "This course will teach you the fundamentals of self-defense and tactical awareness. We will begin with basic exercises to assess your current capabilities." The warm-up was laughably easy. Katie moved through the stretches and light calisthenics while barely increasing her heart rate. Around her, other students panted and strained with the effort. She tried to look equally challenged, but it was difficult to fake exhaustion when she felt like she could run for hours at this pace. Then came partner drills. Katie was matched with a being named Kos, a Yantari with 6 limbs and large compound eyes. They were supposed to practice basic blocking techniques. "Please go easy on me," Kos said nervously. "I know you're very strong." "Of course," Katie agreed. "I'll be careful." They began the drill slowly. Kos moved through a standard blocking motion, and Katie responded with the appropriate counter technique. She moved at what felt like a crawl, giving Kos plenty of time to react, but even that gentle movement made Kos stumble backward in alarm. "Too much force," Commander Vrex called out sharply. "Cadet Brooks, you must maintain better control. This is a learning environment, not a battlefield." Katie felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Yes, sir." "I apologize." They tried again with Katie moving even more slowly. It felt ridiculous, like trying to fight underwater, but Kos seemed more comfortable with the reduced pace. They completed the drill without incident. As the class continued, Katie noticed 4 students watching her from near the equipment storage area. 3 of them were Drellians, a species known for being among the strongest in their region of space. They had thick gray skin, heavily muscled bodies, and expressions that Katie couldn't quite read. The 4th was another Corlean like Commander Vrex. Their names were Garn, Vex, Toll, and Kira, though Katie didn't know that yet. What she did know was that they were watching her with something that looked like hostility. They whispered among themselves and pointed in her direction when they thought she wasn't looking. Katie tried to ignore them and focus on her training. She had come here to learn and to prove that humans could coexist peacefully with other species. She wouldn't let a few unfriendly students derail that goal. But as the class ended and students filed out of the training hall, Garn deliberately walked close enough to bump her shoulder as he passed. It was clearly intentional, a challenge or a test. Katie didn't move, didn't react, just let him pass without comment. She heard him laugh as he walked away. The days fell into a pattern that Katie found both exhausting and frustrating. She woke before the artificial dawn cycle, completed her exercise routine in the cramped space of her quarters, and forced down synthesized protein bars that tasted like compressed cardboard. Then came classes where she had to move in slow motion to avoid accidentally hurting someone or breaking equipment that wasn't designed for Deathworlder strength. The evenings were spent studying alone while other students gathered in groups that somehow never had room for one more person. Pip remained her only real friend. The small Thixian had gotten past her initial fear and now seemed genuinely comfortable around Katie. They studied together most nights, with Pip explaining the complex social structures of different species, while Katie helped with the physical science assignments that required calculations about force and momentum. "You know what's strange?" Pip said one evening while reviewing orbital mechanics problems. "Everyone thinks you're dangerous, but you're the gentlest person I've met here. You apologize when you make noise. You move carefully around others. You even check if I'm comfortable before turning off the lights." Katie looked up from her datapad. "That's just basic courtesy, isn't it? Most species don't think about it that much. They just exist in their own space." Pip tilted her small head, feathers rustling. "I think you're more aware of your impact on others because you know you could hurt someone if you weren't careful." "Maybe. On Earth, we have a saying about power and responsibility. The more capable you are of causing harm, the more careful you need to be. That's a good saying. I wish more people here understood it." The harassment had started small. Katie's training equipment would be moved or hidden before class. Assignments she saved on the shared network would mysteriously vanish, forcing her to redo hours of work. The special high-calorie food she ordered would be contaminated with substances that wouldn't hurt other species, but made it inedible for human consumption. Katie said nothing about any of it. She simply adapted, kept backup copies of her work, arrived early to locate her equipment, and learned which food dispensers were safe to use. Complaining would only make things worse. It would make her look weak or vindictive, and it would confirm what some people already believed about humans being unable to fit into civilized society. But Garn and his 3 friends weren't satisfied with small sabotage. They wanted a reaction, and when they didn't get one, they escalated. It started with comments during tactical combat applications. Garn would make remarks just loud enough for Katie to hear, but quiet enough that Commander Vrex wouldn't notice. "Dangerous creature in our midst," he would mutter. "Wonder when she'll snap and hurt someone." His friends Vex and Toll would laugh while Kira watched Katie with calculating eyes. Katie ignored them. She focused on her drills, moved at the glacial pace required to avoid hurting her practice partners, and pretended she couldn't hear the whispers. Then they moved to more direct confrontation. Garn started positioning himself in Katie's path in the corridors, forcing her to walk around him or wait for him to move. He would stand too close during equipment checks, invading her personal space in a way that was clearly meant to provoke. Once he knocked a datapad from her hands and then apologized with obvious insincerity. Katie picked up the datapad without comment and walked away. She felt Garn's frustration following her down the hallway. "Why don't you report them?" Pip asked after witnessing one of these encounters. "What they're doing is against Academy rules. They're harassing you. If I report them, it makes me look like I can't handle basic social conflict. It suggests humans need special protection." Katie cleaned her datapad screen carefully. "Besides, what would I say? They haven't actually done anything serious. They're just being unpleasant. It's more than unpleasant. They're trying to make you leave, I know. But I'm not leaving." Katie met her friend's concerned gaze. "I'm the first human here, Pip. If I quit, it might be years before they accept another human cadet. I have to show them we can handle adversity. That's not fair to you." "No, it's not, but a lot of things aren't fair." The breaking point came during the 3rd week. Katie had been at the academy for 21 days, and the constant stress of isolation and harassment was beginning to show. She slept poorly. Her appetite suffered even more than the terrible food warranted, and she caught herself making small mistakes in class that she normally wouldn't make. Commander Vrex had assigned a group exercise in tactical combat applications. Students were divided into teams of 4 to practice defensive formations. Katie was grouped with 2 Velnari students and a Hixian, all of whom looked deeply uncomfortable with the arrangement. I'll be very careful, Katie promised before they started. If anything feels wrong, just tell me and I'll adjust. The Velnari students exchanged glances but nodded. The Hixian, whose crystalline body structure made them particularly fragile, positioned themselves as far from Katie as the formation would allow. They began working through the defensive positions. Katie moved with exaggerated slowness, telegraphing every motion well in advance, giving her partners plenty of time to react. It was exhausting in its own way, requiring constant mental monitoring of every muscle movement. But it was working, and her partners were starting to relax slightly. That's when Garn walked past their practice area. Without warning and without breaking stride, he shoved one of the Velnari students, hard enough to send the delicate being stumbling, directly toward Katie. Katie's reflexes were the product of millions of years of evolution on a world where slow reactions meant death. Her hand shot out and caught the falling Velnari by the arm, stopping their momentum before they could crash into her or hit the padded floor. The movement was lightning fast by galactic standards, and her grip was firm enough to prevent injury but gentle enough not to cause harm. The Velnari let out a startled cry. Other students turned to look. The training hall went quiet. Katie carefully steadied the Velnari and helped them regain their balance. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. The Velnari nodded rapidly and scurried away from her as fast as their legs could carry them. The other members of Katie's group also backed up, leaving her standing alone in the practice area. Garn stood a few feet away with his arms crossed, a satisfied expression on his thick features. "Careful there, human. You almost hurt someone. Your reflexes are too dangerous for a training environment." Katie took a slow breath and turned to face him. "You pushed them. That was deliberate, did I? How clumsy of me." Garn stepped closer, and his friends Vex, Toll, and Kira moved to flank him. "Maybe I'm just uncomfortable having a predator in our class. Maybe my instincts tell me to keep my distance from something dangerous. I haven't hurt anyone. Yet. You haven't hurt anyone yet." Garn was now close enough that Katie could smell his breath, which had a metallic tang, but we all know it's only a matter of time. Deathworlders don't belong here. This academy is for civilized species who understand restraint. Katie felt something cold settle in her stomach. This wasn't just harassment anymore. This was a direct challenge, and it was happening in front of witnesses. How she responded would matter. "I understand restraint perfectly well," Katie said quietly. "I've been restraining myself since I arrived here." "Every single day, is that a threat?" "It's a fact." Commander Vrex's voice cut through the tension. "Back to your positions, all of you. This is a training facility, not a social gathering." Garn held Katie's gaze for another long moment before turning away. As he passed, he deliberately bumped his shoulder into hers with significant force. It was like being hit by a child. Katie barely felt it, but she understood the message. He was testing her limits, seeing how much provocation she would tolerate before reacting. Katie returned to her practice area, but her partners had already found excuses to join other groups. She spent the rest of the class period practicing alone while other students gave her a wide berth. That evening, Katie sat in her quarters and composed a message to Helen Carter, her liaison coordinator back on Earth. She described the situation carefully, neither minimizing nor exaggerating the harassment. She explained that she was handling it, but wanted someone back home to know what was happening. Helen's response arrived within hours. "Noted and logged. Unless you feel physically unsafe, continue as planned." This kind of resistance was anticipated. "Your conduct during this period will establish protocols for future human integration. Remember that you're not just representing yourself." Katie read the message 3 times. No pressure, she thought bitterly. Just the weight of an entire species' reputation resting on how she handled a few bullies. Pip found her staring at the viewport later that night. "You should tell Commander Vrex what is really happening. The pushing, the sabotage, all of it. And say what? That some students are being mean to me? That I can't handle basic social friction?" Katie shook her head. "They want me to look weak or dangerous. Complaining makes me look weak. Retaliating makes me look dangerous. The only winning move is to absorb it and keep going. That's not fair." "No, it's not. How long can you keep doing this?" Katie looked out at the stars spinning slowly past the viewport. "As long as I have to. I didn't come this far to quit because some people don't like me." But even as she said it, Katie could feel something building. Garn and his friends weren't going to stop. They were going to keep pushing until something broke. She just had to make sure that when the breaking point came, she handled it in a way that proved humans could be trusted rather than feared. She just hoped she would recognize that moment when it arrived. The morning of the incident started like any other. Katie woke early, completed her exercises, and choked down another tasteless protein bar while reviewing her schedule. She had 2 lectures before tactical combat applications, which gave her time to mentally prepare for whatever harassment Garn and his friends had planned for the day. The first lecture was on interstellar navigation. Katie sat in the back and took careful notes while the instructor, a floating gaseous being whose name she couldn't pronounce, explained jump point calculations. The second lecture covered galactic law and the regulations governing military cooperation between species. Both were interesting enough to keep Katie's mind occupied and away from her growing anxiety about the afternoon class. By the time she arrived at the training hall, Katie felt as ready as she could be. She entered to find most students already present, clustered in their usual groups. The room buzzed with quiet conversation that died down when she walked in. Katie had gotten used to that reaction. What was unusual was that Commander Vrex wasn't there yet. The instructor was always punctual, arriving exactly on time to begin class. Katie checked the chronometer on the wall and confirmed she wasn't early. Vrex was late. Katie moved to her usual position at the back of the hall and began her warm-up stretches. The light gravity made everything feel bouncy and strange, but she had adapted enough to move without looking completely awkward. Around her, other students started their own warm-ups with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Then the intercom activated with a soft chime. Commander Vrex's voice filled the training hall. "Attention, students. I have been detained by an administrative matter that requires immediate attention. Begin your standard warm-up routines. I will arrive within 15 minutes. The announcement was met with the predictable response. Some students headed for the benches to rest. Others gathered in small groups to chat. A few continued their exercises, but most took the opportunity to relax. Without the instructor's direct supervision, discipline became optional. Katie continued her stretches, focusing on her breathing and trying to ignore the prickling sensation on the back of her neck. She could feel eyes on her, and when she glanced up, she saw Garn and his 3 friends standing near the equipment storage area. They were watching her with expressions that made Katie's instincts scream warnings. Garn said something to Vex, who nodded. Then all 4 of them started walking toward Katie with deliberate purpose. Other students noticed and began moving away, creating an empty space around Katie. The quiet conversations died down. Everyone was watching now. Katie straightened from her stretch and stood calmly, keeping her hands relaxed at her sides. Her heart rate increased slightly, but her breathing remained steady. "Can I help you with something?" Garn stopped a few feet away, his thick arms crossed over his broad chest. Vex and Toll moved to flank him on either side while Kira hung back slightly, blocking the path to the door. "We need to talk, human." "About what?" "About you leaving the academy. You don't belong here. This institution was built for civilized species who understand cooperation and restraint, not for primitives from dangerous worlds who solve problems with violence." Katie kept her voice level. "I've passed all the entrance requirements. I've followed every rule. I have as much right to be here as anyone else." "Rights?" Vex stepped forward, his gray skin darkening with aggression. "You talk about rights while representing a species that's been in space for less than 2 decades. You're dangerous, human. Everyone knows it. It's only a matter of time before you hurt someone, and we're not going to wait for that to happen. I haven't hurt anyone here, and I don't plan to." Toll moved closer from the side. "That's exactly what makes you so dangerous. You pretend to be safe, but we know what you are. We've read the reports about humans. Your world is classified as a Class 12 hazard. Your species evolved as hunters. You're built for violence." Katie felt her jaw tighten, but she forced herself to relax. "Lots of species evolved as hunters. Corlians did. Drellians did. That doesn't make us inherently violent. It just means we're capable of it, like most species in the galaxy." "Don't compare us to your kind," Garn said, his voice rising. "Drellians have centuries of civilization. We've evolved beyond our primitive instincts. You're still savages pretending to be civilized." Around them, the other students watched in silence. Katie could see some of them looking uncomfortable, but none of them moved to intervene or call for help. They were going to let this play out however it was going to play out. I'm not going to argue with you about this, Katie said quietly. If you have a problem with my presence here, take it up with the administration. I'm staying. Kira spoke for the first time, her reptilian features arranged in what might have been contempt. We've given you chances to leave with dignity. You refused, so now we're making it clear. Leave voluntarily or we'll make you leave. Katie felt ice settle in her stomach. This was the moment she had been dreading. The confrontation she had tried to avoid for 3 weeks. Is that a threat? It's a promise, Garn said. He took a step forward and his friends moved with him, tightening the circle. Last chance, human. Walk away now. Katie glanced around the training hall. 20 or more students watching. No instructor present. No security visible. Just her and 4 students who outweighed most species in the academy, and who had decided that violence was an acceptable way to solve their problem with her presence. She had spent 3 weeks being patient. 3 weeks absorbing harassment and insults. 3 weeks proving that humans could restrain themselves, could be peaceful, could fit into galactic society. And it had led to this moment anyway. Katie took a slow breath and met Garn's eyes. No, I'm not leaving. I worked too hard to get here. Then you give us no choice, Garn said, and he swung at her. For a being from one of the strongest species in his region of space, Garn was reasonably fast. His thick arm came around in a wide arc that would have connected with devastating force if Katie had been any other student in the academy. It would have sent a Velnari flying across the room. It would have shattered a Hixian's crystalline structure. It would have seriously injured most species present. But Katie wasn't most species. She was from Earth, where predators moved faster than Garn could imagine and where reflexes meant the difference between life and death. She was from a world where gravity was heavier, and where the atmosphere carried more oxygen to fuel faster reactions. To Katie, Garn's punch moved in slow motion. Her hand came up and caught his wrist in mid-swing. Her fingers closed around his thick forearm, and she twisted using basic leverage and his own momentum. Garn's eyes went wide with shock as he found himself suddenly airborne. Katie completed the throw smoothly, and the Drellian hit the padded floor with a heavy thud that knocked the wind from his lungs. 2 seconds had passed since Garn threw his punch. Vex charged from her left, roaring something in his native language. Katie saw him coming without even turning her head. She released Garn's wrist, pivoted on one foot and redirected Vex's momentum with a hand on his shoulder. The Drellian was moving too fast to stop, and Katie's guidance sent him stumbling into a pile of training mats where he crashed with a muffled impact. 4 seconds total. Toll and Kira attacked together from different angles, showing better coordination than the first two. Katie dropped low and swept Toll's legs out from under him with a basic leg sweep she had learned as a child. The Drellian went down hard, and Katie used his falling body as a springboard to leap clear of Kira's reaching claws. In the light gravity, Katie's jump carried her almost 3 feet straight up. She twisted in mid-air with the grace of someone who had trained in martial arts since elementary school and landed behind Kira. A controlled palm strike to the Corleon's lower back sent her sprawling forward onto the padded floor. 8 seconds, Garn was climbing back to his feet. His face twisted with rage and disbelief. Vex had extracted himself from the training mats and was charging again with a wild yell. They came at Katie together, trying to use their combined mass to overwhelm her. Katie's mind processed angles and vectors with the unconscious speed of someone whose ancestors had hunted prey across dangerous terrain for millions of years. She waited until both attackers were almost on top of her, then dropped and rolled. Garn and Vex collided with each other above her with a solid thump. As they stumbled, Katie swept Garn's legs again. This time he fell backward, crashing into Vex. Both went down in a tangle of limbs and frustrated grunts. 12 seconds had passed since Garn threw the first punch. Katie stood in the center of the training hall, her breathing steady and her heart rate only slightly elevated. Around her, all 4 of her attackers lay on the padded floor in various states of shock and pain. None of them were seriously injured, but all of them were down and none of them seemed eager to get back up. The training hall was completely silent. Every student stared at Katie with expressions ranging from shock to fear to something that might have been awe. No one moved. No one spoke. Katie slowly straightened from her ready stance and forced her muscles to relax. I didn't want to do that. You attacked me. I defended myself. That's all. Garn tried to push himself up, winced at the pain in his ribs, and stayed down. How did you move so fast? I didn't move fast. You moved slow. Katie looked around at the other students. I've been holding back since I got here. Moving carefully. Restraining every instinct. But when someone attacks me, those restraints come off. The doors to the training hall burst open and Commander Vrex rushed in with 2 security officers close behind. He stopped just inside the doorway and took in the scene with wide eyes. 4 students on the floor and 1 human standing calmly in the center. What happened here? Vrex demanded. Before Katie could answer Commander Vrex's question, a voice called out from the crowd of watching students. It was one of the Velnari students from Katie's orbital mechanics class, someone she had occasionally exchanged polite greetings with in the hallways. They attacked her, Commander, all 4 of them together. She only defended herself. We all saw it. Other voices joined in, confirming the story. Students who had been silent during the actual confrontation now spoke up, telling Vrex exactly what had happened. Despite their fear of Katie, despite their prejudices and concerns, they told the truth. Commander Vrex listened to several accounts, his bronze scales catching the light as he turned his head from speaker to speaker. Then he looked at Katie with an expression she couldn't quite read. Is this accurate, Cadet Brooks? Yes, sir. They gave me an ultimatum to leave the academy voluntarily. When I refused, they attacked me. I defended myself using appropriate force. Vrex walked slowly around the scene, observing the 4 students still on the floor. Medical personnel were arriving now, moving carefully to check for injuries. Garn was holding his ribs and breathing carefully. Vex had a bruise forming on his shoulder. Tull was rubbing his legs where Katie had swept them. Kira was the least hurt, just winded and shaken. 4 students, Vrex said quietly, almost to himself. 4 of the strongest students in this academy, taken down in seconds by one opponent half their combined mass. He turned back to Katie. How long did the fight last? 12 seconds, sir. Rex's eyes widened slightly. 12 seconds. From first attack to complete incapacitation. 12 seconds. He tapped something on his datapad, probably reviewing security footage. After a moment, he looked up. The timestamp confirms it. 12.3 seconds, to be precise. The medical team was helping Garn to his feet now. The Drellian looked at Katie with an expression mixing pain, shock, and something that might have been grudging respect. He said nothing as the medics guided him toward the door. Rex gestured to Katie. Cadet Brooks, you will come with me. The rest of you are dismissed. Return to your quarters. Katie followed Commander Vrex through the corridors, acutely aware of the security officers walking behind them. Students they passed stopped and stared, word of the incident apparently spreading faster than they could walk. By the time they reached the administrative section of the academy, it felt like everyone knew what had happened. The inquiry room was small and sterile, with plain walls and simple furniture. Katie sat in a chair that felt too delicate under her weight and waited while Vrex reviewed something on his datapad. The silence stretched out uncomfortably. Finally, Vrex set the device down and looked at her. 4 students, 3 Drellians and 1 Corlean. By every physical standard in our database, any one of them should have been more than a match for you. Together, they should have been overwhelming. They underestimated me, sir. Clearly. Vrex leaned back in his chair. The medical team reports no serious injuries. Bruises, strained muscles, and wounded pride. Nothing permanent. You showed remarkable control. I used exactly the force necessary to stop the threat and nothing more. That's what concerns me, Cadet Brooks. Not what you did, but what it represents. Vrex stood and walked to the small window overlooking the academy grounds. Do you understand what you've accomplished today? Katie wasn't sure how to answer that. I defended myself from an assault, sir. You confirmed every fear about your species. Before today, students were afraid of what humans might do. Now they know what humans can do. There's a significant difference between theoretical danger and demonstrated capability. Katie felt something cold settle in her chest. With respect, sir, what was I supposed to do? Let them beat me unconscious? Hope they would stop before causing permanent injury? You could have called for help. You could have retreated. They had me surrounded, sir. And help arrived after everything was over. Katie leaned forward. Commander, I've spent 3 weeks being harassed. My equipment was stolen. My assignments were deleted. My food was contaminated. I reported none of it because I didn't want to appear weak or difficult. Today they escalated to physical violence. I responded appropriately. Vrex was quiet for a long moment. I know. I've been reviewing security footage from the past several weeks. Not just from today, but from your entire time here. I saw what they did to you. I saw how you responded with patience and restraint. He turned to face her. I failed you, Cadet Brooks. As your instructor, I should have intervened earlier. I saw the tension. I hoped it would resolve naturally as students became accustomed to your presence. I was wrong. Katie blinked in surprise. She hadn't expected an apology. Sir, you're not responsible for their choices. No, but I'm responsible for maintaining a safe training environment. I didn't do that. Brex returned to his seat. The question now is what happens next. You're not being charged with anything. The evidence clearly shows self-defense. Garn, Vex, Toll, and Kira will face disciplinary action for assault. Then what's the problem? Politics. Your admission to this academy was controversial. There were administrators who argued against accepting human cadets. They claimed your species was too aggressive, too dangerous, too fundamentally incompatible with civilized society. Rex tapped his claws on the desk. Today's incident will be used as evidence to support their position. Katie felt her stomach drop. So even though I was attacked, even though I defended myself legally, I'm still the problem? Welcome to bureaucracy. Fairness is often irrelevant when politics are involved. Rex pulled up something on his datapad. However, there's another side to this situation. Some administrators, myself included, believe humans have valuable perspectives and capabilities that benefit the galactic community. Today you demonstrated not just your combat effectiveness, but your restraint. You could have seriously injured or killed your attackers. You chose not to. That's not a choice. That's basic decency. Not everyone sees it that way. Many species would have used maximum force when attacked by 4 opponents. You used calibrated force, adjusting each response to neutralize the threat without causing permanent harm. That shows judgment and control. Katie thought about those 12 seconds. Everything had happened so fast, yet some part of her mind had been constantly calculating, adjusting, ensuring each strike was controlled. We're taught from childhood that strength requires responsibility. Humans can be dangerous, but we're also capable of restraint. I hope the administration sees it that way. Brex stood. There will be a formal hearing in 2 days. You'll need to testify about what happened and why you responded the way you did. I suggest you prepare a statement that addresses not just the mechanics of the fight, but your decision-making process. Will I be able to continue classes while we wait? Yes, though I suspect the social environment will be somewhat different now. That was an understatement. When Katie returned to her quarters, she found Pip waiting anxiously by the door. The small Thixian practically tackled her with worry. Katie, everyone's talking about what happened. Are you okay? Are you hurt? I'm fine, Pip, not even a scratch. But 4 against 1 and you just destroyed them. Everyone's saying it was like watching a storm. They said you moved so fast they could barely see you. Pip's feathers were standing on end. I'm glad you're safe, but Katie, everyone's terrified now. I know. Over the next 2 days, Katie experienced complete social isolation. Before, students had avoided her out of general fear and prejudice. Now they avoided her because they had seen concrete evidence of what she could do. The dining hall went silent when she entered. Corridors emptied ahead of her. In classes, even the instructors seemed nervous, calling on her with obvious reluctance. The only constant was Pip, who refused to abandon her friend despite the social cost. Katie was more grateful for that loyalty than she could express. Sickly imposing than Katie, but the arrogant confidence he had displayed before was completely absent. I came to apologize, he said without preamble. What we did was wrong. We were afraid, and we allowed that fear to manifest as aggression. That contradicts everything the Academy teaches. It contradicts what I should believe as a thinking being. Katie studied him carefully. The apology seemed genuine. Why were you afraid of me? Because you're stronger than us. In my culture, strength determines social hierarchy. The concept that you possessed greater strength challenged my entire worldview. Garn's skin had taken on a grayish tint that Katie now recognized as embarrassment in his species. But strength isn't purely physical, is it? You could have seriously injured us. You could have asserted dominance. You chose restraint instead. That required a different kind of strength entirely. It did, Katie agreed simply. I've been attending your presentations and learning about your world. I understand better now. Humans aren't just physically strong. You're complicated in ways I didn't appreciate. Garn hesitated. I would like to learn more if you're willing to teach me. Katie smiled. I think we can arrange that. After Garn left, Pip bounced excitedly around the quarters. Do you understand what this means? If Garn changes his perspective, others will follow. He's respected among Drellian students. This could be a genuine turning point. Maybe, Katie said cautiously. Or maybe it's just one person changing their mind. But Pip was correct. Garn's transformation created ripples throughout the student body. Other students began attending Katie's presentations voluntarily, rather than because it was assigned. Discussion groups formed to explore questions about human culture and psychology. The dining hall seating arrangements shifted subtly, with Katie no longer eating in complete isolation. Commander Vrex summoned her to his office one afternoon. I've been reviewing your progress as cultural liaison. The administration is extremely pleased with the results. Several other educational institutions have requested information about implementing similar programs. Other institutions? Katie asked in surprise. Throughout the galactic community. Your work here is attracting attention beyond this academy. Vrex smiled, an expression that still looked slightly predatory on his reptilian features. You came here to learn tactical operations and military cooperation. Instead, you're teaching us all something far more valuable. Katie felt overwhelmed. I'm not certain I'm qualified for that kind of responsibility. Few people feel qualified when responsibility first finds them. You'll grow into it. Vrex leaned forward. I have a proposal. After you complete your standard cadet training, I want you to join a new program we're developing. We're creating a corps of integration specialists who can help bridge gaps between species. You would be ideal for it. I came here to become a tactical officer, Katie said slowly, and you still can. But Katie, what you're doing now matters more than tactical training. You're building understanding between species. In the long term, that prevents more conflicts than any amount of combat preparation. Katie thought about the weeks of isolation and harassment, the 12-second fight that changed everything, and the gradual transformation she had witnessed since then. She thought about Pip's unwavering friendship, Garn's sincere apology, and the slowly changing attitudes throughout the academy. Can I think about it? She asked. Of course, take whatever time you need. That evening, Katie contacted her family on Earth through the video communication system. Her mother answered, looking tired from her work shift but happy to see her daughter. Katie, how are you, sweetheart? I'm doing well, Mom. Better than I expected, actually. She told her family everything that had happened, watching her mother's expressions cycle through shock, anger, pride, and concern. Her father, listening from the background, just shook his head in amazement. You handled it perfectly, kid, her father said. You didn't let them provoke you into becoming what they feared. You showed them something better? I'm not finished yet, Katie said. There's still significant work ahead. There's always more work, her mother said softly. But you're not doing it alone. Remember that. After the call ended, Katie sat with Pip in their quarters looking out the viewport at the stars. Somewhere out there were thousands of worlds and countless species, all trying to coexist in a complicated galaxy. Humans were newcomers to this community, bringing with them a reputation for strength, aggression, and danger. But they also brought something equally important: the ability to adapt, to learn, to bridge gaps between vastly different ways of thinking and being. Katie thought about Commander Vrex's offer. An integration specialist wasn't what she had planned when she left Earth. But plans evolved. Goals changed based on new circumstances and opportunities. What are you thinking about? Pip asked sleepily from her perch. The future and how we build it. That's very philosophical for this time of evening. I'm allowed occasional philosophical moments. Pip's feathers ruffled with amusement. You're thinking about accepting that job, aren't you? The integration specialist position. Maybe it feels important. It is important. But so was your original goal. Pip looked up at her with bright eyes. Can't you do both? Katie smiled at her small friend. You know, you're remarkably wise for someone so tiny. I contain multitudes, Pip declared dramatically. The next morning, Katie attended tactical combat applications with a different feeling than she had carried for weeks. Commander Vrex was demonstrating an advanced defensive technique, and students practiced in their assigned pairs. Katie was partnered with Lax, and they worked through the exercise carefully, both mindful of their physical differences. You're improving at controlling your movements, Lax observed. I'm learning how to adapt to my environment properly. That's what makes humans effective, isn't it? Your adaptability. It's one of our strengths, Katie agreed. Though sometimes we require time to figure out the proper way to adapt. Across the training hall, she noticed Garn working with his own partner. He caught her eye and nodded respectfully. Katie nodded back. After class, Commander Vrex asked her to remain. Have you considered my proposal? Katie took a breath. I have. I want to do it. The Integration Specialist program, I mean, but I also want to complete my tactical officer training if that's possible. Vrex's smile was genuine. I think we can arrange that. You'll have a heavier course load, but I suspect you can handle it. I've handled worse challenges. Yes, you have. As Katie left the training hall, she felt lighter than she had in months. The path forward was clear now. She would complete her training. She would serve as an integration specialist. She would help build bridges between species that had every reason to mistrust each other. And perhaps, she would help change how the galaxy perceived humans, not as dangerous Deathworlders to be feared, but as complicated beings capable of both strength and compassion, violence and restraint, aggression and cooperation. 12 seconds had shown the galaxy what humans could do when threatened. Now Katie would spend her career showing them what humans could accomplish when given the opportunity to build something better. She met Pip in the corridor, and her small friend bounced excitedly. You told him yes, didn't you? I'm doing both. Officer training and specialist work. Pip's feathers puffed up with pride. You're going to change everything, Katie. The next human who comes here won't have to fight the way you did. That's the goal. Though I suspect every generation faces its own battles, probably true. But each battle becomes slightly easier because of the work done before. Pip paused thoughtfully. That's how progress actually works. That's exactly how it works. They walked together through the academy corridors while other students passed by. Some nodded to Katie now while others still maintained distance. Changing deeply held attitudes required time. Fear didn't disappear overnight, but change was happening. And that was enough. Katie Brooks had come to the Galactic Defense Academy to prove humans could be trusted. In 12 seconds, she had demonstrated both the danger and the restraint her species possessed. In the weeks following, she had shown something even more crucial. Understanding could overcome fear when people were willing to look past their preconceptions. The galaxy was vast and filled with species that had legitimate reasons to be cautious of newcomers, especially newcomers from dangerous worlds. But it was also filled with beings like Pip and Lax and even Garn, who were willing to look past their fears and see the individual beneath the reputation. Katie looked at the stars through the corridor viewports. Somewhere out there, other humans were preparing to join the galactic community. They would face their own challenges and their own critical moments, but they wouldn't face them alone, because Katie Brooks would be there to help them navigate the complicated process of interspecies cooperation. And that made all the difference.